Rush Limbaugh is going to go after Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton. He's going to attack Democrats as being against the private sector. Let's listen.
Elizabeth Warren talks about how all of these business owners don't have to worry about the marauding bands that would come and seize everything at their factory because you pay for all the cops. You pay for all the security. You pay for the firemen. Well, she didn't say who the marauding bands are. You know who they are? She is. Hillary Clinton is. Barack Obama. The Democrat Party is the marauding band aiming at every private sector business they can get their hands on. The marauding bands are not criminals in the common sense. The marauding bands today are Democrats and anybody else at any government agency deciding to target any business whatsoever and to make it pay for whatever transgressions they want to accuse it of. And it's all legal. These marauding bands can regulate a business out of existence. The marauding bands of Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and the federal government can harass a business legally to the point that it makes no sense to stay open. Marauding bands that can tell bakeries who they have to do business with. The marauding bands today are not just your average, ordinary street thugs that everybody knows. The marauding bands today targeting wealth and success and achievement can all be found in the Democrat Party.
That is such a great point, Rush. So he's clear. He's arguing that these goddamn Democrats are a marauding band and they go after the private sector and they regulate them out of existence and they're terrible with the free market and capitalism and the private sector and all these businesses. And it's just a fact. It's just a fact. Well, that's interesting. So how would Rush go about proving that claim? Well, I don't know. Maybe under Democratic rule, we would have a situation where we would bleed private sector jobs because he's arguing these Democrats, they crack down on business and the private sector loses drastically when they're in power. That's what his argument is. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the numbers and see if it bears out what Rush Limbaugh is saying. You see where this is going? Since 1961, our private economy has produced 66 million private sector jobs. So what's the score? Democrats versus Republicans in terms of job creation. The Republicans created 24 million jobs. Pretty good, right? Democrats, 42 million jobs. So the claim that the Democrats are harsh on business, they're hard on the private sector and the free market and capitalism and the individual business owners, it is empirically inaccurate. It is factually incorrect. It is, what's the other word for that? False. Wrong. But it's Rush Limbaugh. I don't know why I would expect there to be data behind his bloviating rants in the first place. But another ironic part of this is he's saying, well, the Democrats are trying to regulate these businesses out of existence. You know who really does that? Republicans. Any business that the Republican Party does not like and they do not agree with, they do try to regulate it out of business. They do try to regulate it out of existence. What's the perfect example of this? Health clinics. This is exactly what so many red states are doing when it comes to health clinics. They pass TRAP laws, which literally stands for the Targeted Restriction of Abortion Procedure laws. So they say they'll walk into an abortion clinic or a free clinic or a health clinic, and they'll take out a tape measure. They'll measure the height of the walls, and they'll measure the width of the hallway, and they'll say, oh, well, your ceilings are 13 feet up there. It needs to be 14 feet. According to our new regulations, so fix it or we're going to have to shut you down. Now, again, do they really care about the height of the ceiling or the width of the halls? Not at all. They're just doing that to purposefully over-regulate these people and force them out of business because they don't agree with what they're doing in the first place. So this is a clear case of projection, What Rush is saying the Democrats are guilty of, oftentimes the Republicans are guilty of it. And again, to reiterate the first point, it is a fact that the Democrats are actually better with the private sector than the Republicans are. It's just a matter of adding up the job creation under the different administrations. And with President Obama, for example, this is another good point here. He's created over 5 million private sector jobs, and he's actually cut hundreds of thousands of government jobs. So this guy is a Republican's wet dream right now in terms of what he's actually doing. He even cut the deficit tremendously, which is a right-wing idea that they pretend to care about, but then when Obama does it and the Democrats do it, they act like they don't care about it anymore. They got nothing to say about it. So again, Rush has no clue what he's talking about. And the final thing I'll say here, where he is right about this, he goes, well, the Democrats, these marauding bands, the Democrats tell bakers who they can and can't sell to. That's right. I'm very proud that we force racist bakers to sell to black people. I'm very proud that we force places that may discriminate against women, we force them to accept women. I'm very proud that we were trying to make it so that bakeries have to sell to gay people, because here's what I believe in. I believe that nobody should be allowed to do arbitrary discrimination. It's fine if you kick somebody out of your store or you refuse to do business because they're knocking over shelves or they're cursing or they're being an asshole. Nobody's taking away the right to kick that person out of your business. But what we are saying is it can't be something biological and natural that they can't help. Somebody can't help their skin color. Somebody can't help their gender. Somebody can't help who they're sexually attracted to. So to punish them on that basis is as arbitrary and wrong and unethical and immoral as punishing somebody because their hair color is brown or that their eyes are blue or that they're hairy or you name it. So on that point, Rush is right, but it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that we do effective business regulation to make it so that there's not brazen discrimination. If we didn't do that, Mississippi, for a long time after the Civil Rights Act, would still have had, separate but equal, where they force black people to a different part of the diner, there's colored water fountains, and there's basically open segregation. If it wasn't for the government stepping in and doing the right thing and forcing these places to act right, then for the longest time it still would have been basically a legal system of discrimination.